Very good afternoon, everyone. I hope I'm audible. A quick yes or no in chat would be great. Thank you. Great. Thank you for the confirmation, Mr. Vikram, Mr. Ravi Kumar, Mr. Saurabh. Thank you. As we wait, we will begin probably in about 5-10 minutes. I'm just waiting for more of the audience to join in. So as we wait, I just want to know like what is that you're expecting in today's session. I'm sure you would have gone through the mailer, so you have a brief idea of what we are going to expect today. I'd like to mention that our speaker, Mr. Anthony Joseph, is also here with us. Who will join in a little later. Please put in your inputs on the chat while we wait. I would like to see them. Thank you. All right. Good to see Mr. Vikram. Okay. Any further inputs from the rest of us here? All right. I see a question in the Q&A tab already. So I'd also like to mention that we will also be taking up questions towards the end of the session. So you can either use the chat or the Q&A tab, and you can just enter your queries there. All right. So we will be starting in about 5 minutes. Once again, thank you all for your patience. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, I just wanted to acknowledge to the ones who joined a little later. I hope I'm audible, everyone. Quick yes or no from the ones who joined recently. Thank you. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Vinsul, Ms. Kamini, Ms. Neelam, Ms. Sonali, Ms. Vishaka. All right, I see a bunch of them here. Okay, Ms. Manisha, Ms. Puspanjali, Fatima, Sharat. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. All right, thank you all for your patience. I hope I'm audible. We will get started. Once again, thank you all for joining. I'd like to thank our chief speaker, Mr. Anthony Joseph, for joining us today. This is, in fact, our first webinar with him. So I look forward to a wonderful session with all of you. So before we head forward, what we're going to do is I'm going to run you through a short introduction about the company that I represent and a few slides regarding the products and services, followed by which I will hand it over to our speaker. Introducing myself, I am Siddharth Nandakumar and I handle product marketing at Web Solutions. So let us move forward with the introduction. Hope you're seeing my screen. Web Solutions is a 20-year-old company as of today. We were initially known as Wipro ePeripherals, and we were part of Wipro itself. We were, in fact, the peripherals manufacturing division of the company. And in 2000, the company became an independent entity. So from there on, the company has evolved in terms of the solution offerings. And today, we have various types of solutions, which I'd like to show you in the oncoming slides. All right. As you can see, we have managed print services, digital transformation solutions, which covers two different types of solutions, one for taxation and the other one being DMS, that is document management. And thirdly, intelligent office automation solutions. We basically have printer offerings. A few more slides regarding the solutions. Now, on the corporate side, we have managed print services. We are in fact known as India's #1 NPS company. Now, the business here is such that we deal with printing hardware for organizations, and they would be given a per page pricing, basically. And we also handle their existing and new printing hardware altogether. And the complete end-to-end support and service is taken care throughout the country. Moving on to serial number 2, we are in fact Ricoh's authorized distributor, that is Ricoh Japan. We have a wide range of MFPs and SFPs, that is multifunction and single function printers on offer on the catalog. And we also undertake the service and support part of it. Moving on to number 3, that is the enterprise solutions that we have on offer, digital transformation. We have a taxation solution. I'm sure all of you have heard of the term GST. We have an all-in-one solution that takes care of all your GST requirements, right from filing, reconciliation, data preparation. We have close to 80 different methodologies of validation built onto the solution. And we have modules for e-way bill, e-invoicing. We undertake most ERP integrations and other API-related integrations. And we also have a dedicated team that would take care of the filing and reconciliation in-house. Moving on to the next slide. Serial number 4, that is document management solutions. We have a document management solution, which is also built on with a powerful workflow automation system through which we are able to build business process automation for various use cases and tailor-made to custom requirements. And lastly, we have a digital signature solution which would handle all your contract management related issues. It is also based on Aadhaar and token-based signature. And we are integrated with the official eMudra platform itself. Moving on. Once again, thank you all for joining. I hope my voice is audible. Please don't mind me asking now and then. This is for my own confirmation. All right, a quick view of our customers. All right, so moving on, before I introduce our speaker, I would like to launch a quick poll for the audience present here. So I would like to know if the audience here is currently exploring any HR automation related solutions. Let me keep this on for the next 1 minute before I take it down. So what I would ideally be doing here is the ones who are interested, we would be able to reach out to them at a later stage for probably a little more in-depth discussion and a personalized demo of our solution. Also, I'd like to mention that we will be taking up questions, dedicated Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. So you can use the chat and the QA tabs, which you are seeing on your screen, to put down your queries. I see a few of them who have raised their hands. Please, if you have any specific query, please put it down on the chat. I will also be able to take it up at a later stage. Thank you, Ms. Vishaka and Ms. Neelam. All right, so let me end the poll. Thank you for your inputs. All right, moving on, let us introduce the speaker. Introducing Mr. Anthony Joseph. Mr. Anthony, a HR expert and board member with experience extending across various domains over the years. Mr. Anthony has worked in manufacturing, unionized and non-unionized environments, and both labor-intensive and highly automated. He has also contributed to the IT services in HR, covering IT, ITES, and consulting. Mr. Anthony has been a part of executive and leadership teams and has corporate expertise extending to HR, business, and strategic functions. On a lighter note, he is also an avid sports fan across multiple outdoor sports, with football and athletics on the highest level of his interest. I'd like to mention a very inspiring fact here. Mr. Anthony is also an active runner. He has done the TCS Bangalore 10K run 10 times so far, He's also completed the pre-COVID 100K cross-terrain walkathon. And he's running on the 11th of December, which is going to be his 26th 10K run. So he has covered running across various cities, that is Bangalore and Hyderabad. And this is truly inspiring. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here with us today, sir. I'm sure the audience is looking forward to directly hearing from you. Thank you, sir. Over to you.
Yes, Siddharth, thank you very much. Just checking. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, sir. Loud and clear.
Perfect.
And I can also see your camera. I'll just put it on the spotlight for everyone. Yeah, done, sir.
Great. And you can see that in a different background, as well as when you're wearing a suit and tie, you look different. But just to let you know, I'm the same person who's speaking to you. Okay, great.
Absolutely.
I know you talked about just the whole alignment, and that is the subject of the webinar today. So let's delve straight into that. I've got a couple of slides, and we're going to cover this into two different parts. Number one is talk about business, talk about people and environment. And by environment, I'm not focusing just on ESG, but as you would see, we would talk about the environment in which we work in and the environment in which we live in. And hopefully at the end of it, you would have some insights. I don't promise that you're going to have all the answers, but you would have some insights as to what this alignment is about. And hopefully some insights also into what's it that we can do as organizations and as individuals in this environment. So let's understand what business is. And did you have a poll right now?
Yeah. I was just awaiting. Let me launch that poll right now. So I hope all of you are seeing this poll. Do you have cross-functional experience extending to various domains, departments? Let me keep this on for the next 1 minute, following which we can go ahead with the slides. Okay. Mr. Anthony, I hope you are able to see this as well.
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right, let me end the poll. So on a majority, we do have most of them who have cross-functional experience. Okay.
I'm reasonably good in maths. We have 30 participants, but just 18 people that have participated in the poll.
Right.
So we would do another poll towards the end, and I would encourage each one of us to actually participate in the poll.
Absolutely.
Good news is if you press twice, you can't do that. But we'd like to get, so you can't cross 30, but we'd like to reach the 30 mark.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, audience, I'd like all of you to be a little more interactive. Like I'd mentioned, we will also do a Q&A session. So would like the interaction level to be a little better. Okay. So can I bring in the first table, sir?
Sure. Yeah, did you share the results with the audience?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, perfect. So when you talk about, a lot of times we look at our leaders, we look at our CEOs and we say, what's happening? And I can tell you from experience, after the niceties of how are you, how's the weather, and how's your family, the CEOs get asked some very standard questions. What's your top line? What's your bottom line? And what's your pipeline? And therefore, when they're asking their team members the same question in a different way, it all originates from top line, bottom line, and pipeline. And therefore, the expectations when people have from business. It's about, is the business viable? And viability does not only mean survival. It means what's the purpose that we've set up the business for, both financial and non-financial measures. What's going to be the return on that over a period of time, both in terms of short-term and medium and long-term? Does the business offer an area where it can be scaled up? Which means, is the business size large enough for someone to invest time and money into that? And is this going to be a flavor of the season or flavor of the week versus is the business sustainable? So requirements the stakeholders have from business is viability, return on investment, scalability, and sustainability. So what do you think is the expectation they have from people or the people function? Let's see that. What's your pipeline? Do you have a talent pipeline? How productive is the pipeline? Is the pipeline of my talent existing as well as future? Is that scalable? And is the talent going to be sustainable? Sustainability does not mean zero attrition. Sustainability is not measured by employee codes. Sustainability is my talent available so that over a period of time, as long as the business has to run and keep running, is the talent pool going to be available? Is it going to be scalable? Is it going to be productive? And will that be sustainable? Let's talk about the environment. We don't live in a world that is isolated or insulated. So we need the understanding of the geopolitical. We celebrate success and failures of different countries. Many times we celebrate the success of a different country. Many times, just in our own humanity, we celebrate the failures of different countries because we consider them as enemy countries. But the understanding of the environment, that is crucial. Most of our businesses play in the global space. At the same time, we need to understand what is domestic. We need to understand the statutory environment of our own country and of the countries in which we operate in. And what do the agreements between these two countries mean? And again, is the environment viable? And the measures that are put in for the environment that we sign up for, does it lead to viability of a country? And is that sustainable? So if you look through, and a lot of times, and I've seen a couple of messages on the chat, one of them is a very direct one. How can they be working hand in hand? And the reality is there's much more in common than what we perceive. It's almost like saying, when we ask the question as to how can business and people and how can my business and HR be seen side by side? And if you look at the environment in which you work in, and you look at the business environment itself, there's a lot of interdependency and there's a lot of congruency. And actually, there's a lot more of things in common than what we perceive. So if you're asking a question, why do we see it as business versus HR? You probably had a bad experience or a set of bad experiences, or you are very uninformed or misinformed. Because if somebody from the outside were to just observe a family conversation and or husband and wife speaking to each other in a very animated tone. It may be excitement, it may be a disagreement, it may be an argument, but if anybody were to conclude that this is husband versus wife, it's a very wrong conclusion. Similarly, I'm going to take a pause here and invite comments on chat on, do you see the commonality and the alignment just in terms of expectations each of the stakeholders have from the segments of business, people, and environment, and none of them operate or none of them exist in isolation. So let's see some chat messages.
Right, audience, over to you. We'd
Okay,
like to
what
see
is
some.
your take? What is your take on, do you see commonality? Is it everything one versus the other? Or are there cases wherein the expectations actually have far more similarity than what we think is one versus the other? I will take a 30-second break and just look out for some chat, some messages on the chat. We cautioned you that we're going to make this interactive, so that's
Right.
important. Let me ask an easier question. Can we just have a message which confirms that you're able to hear and see me? Okay, at least I get one from Vikram where there's a confirmation. Look for some more.
Yeah, you are loud and clear, so there's no doubt on that. Okay. Also, audience, if you do not want the message, if you would like to directly interact, I will be able to do that as well. So you just have to say yes on chat or just raise your hand. I will be able to give you permissions. Okay, so we have another input from Ms. Nandita.
And we will respond to that. So I don't want to keep reacting to each one, but we will certainly respond to that. Okay.
All right. So would you like to go ahead?
That's right.
Okay.
And here are some sample measures. So what is the business measured on? And here you will find a very, and I've just taken 4 sample measures. So we'll get to those of that. Okay. The business has measures on cash flow. Is the business earning cash? Is it able to sustain current requirements of cash, either through funds which have been accumulated or funds that are getting generated from the business or funds that will get acquired from those willing to lend, which means could be banks, could be institutions, or could be investors. A running business and a business cycle and a business project that we make would need to have what are going to be your operating margins, as well as your financial levers. Okay. You call them as EBITDA, you call them as operating profit, you call them as budgets versus actuals. Absolutely. A business has measures on pipeline, which is demand, which is what is my sales forecast, what is my sales achievement, how large is the industry for me to continue. And the business has risks. How much of these are measurable and manageable? If you spoke in February of 2020, nobody had heard about COVID. If you'd spoken to people 15 years earlier about a tsunami, people didn't know what a tsunami was. Now, those are unknown risks. What about the risks that exist? since you're talking to an HR community, what is the risk of the new labor code that India is going to implement and the impact it's going to have on Provident Fund? And have we measured those risks? So coming back, therefore, to business itself, I talked about viability on the previous slide and the returns and scalability and sustainability. The measures are cash flow, the different levers, the pipeline in terms of demand, and how sustainable that's going to be. Similarly with people, what is my talent availability? Either within the company or I need to get from outside. What is my skills availability, training people who are currently in the system? How much would people learn on the job? And we're used to terms like that's learning and development. And then we need policies, you need processes, you need practices, you need employee engagement, and you need systems and automation. So let's thank our sponsor, WEP Solutions, for this. They've also had a preview on what they do. Siddharth has committed to reaching out to people that have shown interest, and we'd also have a demo, but that is one aspect of it. But that certainly is a big part when you're entering a place, just like you say, Griha Pravesh. So the whole recruiting and the onboarding when people have come in, that is an important step of people starting their journey or the life cycle into an organization. And then what happens to ERPs, what happens to our payroll systems, how well is our HR practices integrated, where people can find a lot of things on the web, at the same time, still be able to have interactions with people, wherein the activities relating to the head and the hand can be outsourced, but those relating to the heart still remain through our people interactions, whether that be with HR or be with their managers. That is all part of employee engagement. So without having to change the slide, let me just relate to the slide that we talked about earlier, which is when we talk about recruiting, I'm going to challenge us to start thinking in terms of, am I creating the pipeline of my talent, which is going to help the pipeline of my business? Saying it differently, can I guarantee the business through existing as well as through new talent, so that the business pipeline that the business CEO is going to be measured on will be met, which is also about skills and development. Is my pipeline of my talent dealing or responding to productivity, which is helping to create the returns on investment that the business has to get there? Look at processes not as control mechanisms, not as HR, which can be seen as the center of power, but is that helping my business to be scalable? And processes and systems automation go hand in hand. They are addressing the scalability and the sustainability quotient, which is important. When I look at the environment, we talked about the geopolitical. It's the country, it's the industry, it's the business, and it is ourselves, both as HR functional practitioners, as well as individuals. Then there are statutory regulations, national, domestic, international, regional, the ones that we sign up on friendly countries. how viable are these? In India, if you're looking at the stock market, after the Q2 results, the share price of Coal India has been going up because they've had fantastic results. And then somebody else may argue that coal hits your environment. And somebody else will argue that coal is the way where I sustain my heating and I provide food for people. And therefore, as a business, as a country, as a region, are we addressing our current needs of survival, or is it something that we want to optimize? And none of these happen in isolation. And so that addresses what I would call scalability. And is the planet sustainable? Is the environment and our regional relationship sustainable to take care of the future generations? So in this whole thing, whether it be a business organization, irrespective of the industry, they have very similar objectives. The measures could be different, but for your segments that think about business, that think about people, that think about the environment, they need to have the same outcomes. So audience, I'm going to take a pause, and I was expecting some more questions, some more responses on chat, because the good news is I've used slides. The better news is I've not used too many slides, and I'm going to be talking about only the two slides that I've shown you, this one and the previous one. So with this, I'm going to take a pause. Siddharth, are there any messages coming to you directly?
Nothing yet, sir. Nothing yet. I'm still awaiting some more. Nothing at the moment. Audience, do you have any questions at the moment? Please use the chat and the QA. We would like to see a few more queries. I did see a couple. Okay. I see Mr. Vikram and Vishaka with their hands raised. Would you like to speak up, Mr. Vikram, Ms. Vishaka? Okay. All right. So would you mind?
No, please go ahead.
All right. Let me just allow him to talk. Mr. Vikram, you can unmute yourself and talk. Yeah.
A very good evening, sir. This is Vikram Babu here. I work for an organization called Coda Technology Solutions Private Limited, which is about 11 years old organization in the business of engineering and IT segment, and we are into master data management company with about 150 plus of people force. I would like to take your guidance and inputs in terms of with relevance to today's topic, alignment of business, people, and environment. What would be your one takeaway that I can start implementing for this environment of an IT with the young blood in the system, where the adaptation to a certain extent, I feel that in today's workforce, they feel that in terms of the longevity or the tenure in the organization is very much dynamic. So I need your help in this. How to have a, as you rightly said, that sustainability is not the employee code or what we are looking at. Could you throw some light on?
Let's look at it in two parts. Number one is this, and I'm sure this is also a question many of us in the audience would have, which is how do you balance an employee continuity and an organization's continuity?
Right.
Okay. Let's talk about this term called the environment, and the environment in which you started working and I started working, and the environment in which our parents started working or continue to work through their careers were very different.
True, very true.
So when we say that, this prime minister was better than this prime minister of a country, or when we say when we say Don Bradman, Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, then I would like to say use a word which Jeffrey Boycott uses, which is that is stupid. Okay, because people are forgetting, they just see numbers, but they don't see the environment in which those respective prime ministers or those cricketers have performed. So, and I wouldn't call that wrong, I would call that as incomplete. So let's get back to today's environment. It's important, therefore, to understand what reality is. It's important for us as HR practitioners, as people, as part of a business, to number one, understand reality. Number two, to also communicate that reality with all our stakeholders so that there is some commonality in thinking, as well as in case there are differing views, we enrich that thinking. So if your question is, how can the business sustain if people start shifting jobs every 1 or 2 years or every 6 months? Okay, and my question and my response to that will be, the reality is this: businesses are stronger than individuals. That's reality, which means we've had downturns in the past and we've had crazy growth cycles in the past. We've had COVID in the past, and businesses have dealt with that. As a result of which, businesses will always find a way, because businesses is a collection of environments, it's a collection of people, it's a collection of the board, and it's a collection of executives and employees at all levels that work in there together. So while some people may leave, the organization as a whole does stay together unless something drastic happens. So the business does get hurt, but there's a difference between getting a scratch on your car, getting a dent on your car, or your car is totally bashed up. Okay. Having said that, therefore, it's equally important for businesses to understand that unless employees are productive and unless they're engaged, you don't get the same return on investment as you would get should employees be engaged. So it's a two-way traffic. And I'm saying this again to the HR community wherein there are HR leaders who stand up and say, this is right, and we draw a balance. There are HR leaders who get very emotional only about people and say, if you don't do this, everything will go wrong. And there are HR leaders who say management has said this, that is a diktat, and therefore that has to be followed in no questions. And therefore, I'm going to ask you to introspect and say, which kind of HR leader are you? The balanced one who shows everything together, including risks, risking his or her job because the manager wouldn't like it? Are you the HR leader who says, management has said this, just implement? Or are you the HR leader that says, if employees are upset, I need to be taking the side of employees because I'm their representative? Because if you yourself as an individual don't have the balance, your ability to communicate the balance is going to be difficult. So coming back, therefore, to your question, to your response is, it's important the organization understands. It's important that when you're speaking to individuals, you tell them that, changing a job every 12, 15, 18 months, you'll end up doing the same job over and over again. And your career is not 10 years. Your life cycle, your work cycle is going to be 25, 30, 40, or even 50 years. It may be in different organizations. It may be in different industries, but you will get hurt as much as an organization would. You would get hurt far more than what an organization would get if you're not taking care of your own stability.
Got it,
Okay.
sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Great.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Siddharth, there are some other questions that have come up. So you want to...
Yeah, we have a few other inputs.
So,
So just one
yeah,
minute.
let me respond to Vishaka's.
Sure.
A business can't run with people, their stability. I hope I've answered that. It is a combination of both. It's not one-sided.
Yeah, I said just give me 1 minute if you wouldn't mind. Ms. Vishaka, would you also like to interact? Because I see your hands are raised. Would you like me to give you permissions to talk? Okay. Yeah, you can go ahead. Ms. Vishaka, you can unmute yourself. Ms. Vishaka not able to unmute? Let me just try that again. I will just, yeah, you should be able to talk.
Audible to you, sir?
Yeah,
Yes,
you're
we
audible.
can hear you. You'll have to speak a little louder, but yes, we can hear you.
Good evening, sir. Am I audible to you?
Yes.
Yes, sir. As I questioned in the chat, my question is still same, that how business can be run when people will not be stable, and that stability is totally depends on company's culture and environment. So how you will guide us in same, because we are facing lots of issues regarding this stability.
Can you explain a little more about stability of employees?
Yes, sir. As I would like to ask that people are not satisfied with the environment and culture, right? So
Mhm.
at same time, they are changing the job. They wanted to change. They don't want it to change. Like as per their requirement, management will change and doing the things accordingly. But every now and then, it's not possible for management also. So as at same time, they are like having 2 to 3 jobs in their hand after such experience. So at
Okay.
same time,
Mhm.
yes,
Go ahead.
at same time, how management will react or handle that situation, or being a HR professional, how we can handle same situation. As many time employee also right, and management also in some conditions not worse.
Let me try and answer that. Number one is the following. Okay. I think it's very important to understand an organization's culture. So let me explain what I believe, or what I would interpret as culture. Okay. Are you working in an environment which is a small scale business or a large scale business or a medium sized business? Number one. Are you working in a business that is struggling to grow? Are you working in a business that is steady and will have low risk but low growth? All these are aspects of environment. Now, and let's talk brutally, let's be brutally honest out here, which is business is a matter of supply and demand. And employees at some point of time, based on the skills, they know they can target and they can get into. That is reality. Okay.
Agree with you, sir.
So the lower skill that you are, unfortunately, the lower is your bargaining power. And not bargaining power in terms of money, bargaining power in terms of your work environment, etc.
Exactly.
Okay. So,
Yes, sir.
which is a reality wherein people use and sometimes misuse their situation and their power for getting things done. Okay, that is reality. And I'm not passing judgment. I'm not passing judgment with this. Is this right or wrong? But that is reality.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I agree with you. one more question. As same thing is happening in the senior level also and managerial level also, how you will suggest how we can move forward?
I think it's again a case of, if you as an employee have skills
Yes.
to choose your environment, you are more likely to choose an environment where you feel more comfortable working, you feel more safe working, so that you can be honest to yourself and honest to your own values. And you have a higher chance of working on your own terms and not being exploited. Versus if you are someone that as an employee
Mhm.
do not have the same level of skills and the same level of bargaining power,
Mhm.
or the same backing, as we would say, you are more likely to be exploited. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Which
Okay.
is, as a result of which, therefore, what we can do to ourselves and what we can do to the employees that we're responsible for is having them skilled enough
Mhm.
so that they can come closer to the level of, to the potential that they have, and they are able to choose their environment far better than what they have when they don't have those skills.
Okay.
Okay, we don't live in a perfect world, which is unfortunate. And
Yes,
I'm
sir.
not saying management is right and employees are wrong and vice versa.
Exactly. We can't
Okay,
say
which
because
is
we are the bridge between management and employee.
because you also have the other way around,
Exactly.
and how many of us do recruiting? You've given employees jobs and they don't join.
But
And
many
we
people
also have
are,
situations, wherein something was told to an employee during the interview,
yes.
but when they get the offer letter after they join, it's very different. So both things happen.
But after getting offer letter, appointment letter, then also they are like stop receiving calls and giving the
Absolutely.
answers
So
like,
this is what I'm trying to explain, which is somebody who takes a stand, which is management is always right or employees are always right. That's where I say the person is on the wrong path.
yes, yes.
Okay.
So how it can be stopped? Like the moonlight
You
concept
can't
is
you can't
there
totally
because
stop. Unfortunately, it will keep happening. It is a world of demand and supply, but you and I owe it to our employees to show them reality as much as possible, because it will catch up.
yes,
If you've
sir.
changed 3 jobs in your first 5 years, and then when you want to grow into a leadership position, your
Mhm.
chances of being successful is far less than somebody who's been more steady than you. And I'm not
But
saying,
yes, sir.
1 minute, I'm not saying that the person who stays with one organization, because the first question that we had on the poll was, do you have cross-functional experience?
Yes.
And if you've not had any other experience apart from the work that you've done for the last 10 years, then you are very likely to be, um, you are very likely to be, um, what do you say, outdated.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
we'll get to the next question, please. Siddharth, if there's,
Sure,
I'm
sir.
not.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I I believe, yeah, Ms. Nandita has actually mentioned on QA, environment is not always a choice. Regulatory environment can lead to strict and rigid policies that can reduce innovation and creativity. How to then deal with creating innovation in such an environment?
Let me throw some light onto this, and I'm actually going to challenge each one of us. Okay, which is, all of us and none of us can be a Greta Thunberg. You've heard about her, is that right? And all of us cannot be taking the role of being activists. But let's look at the environment in our own workplace. And now I'm talking about the physical environment. Okay. When you have a chance to use the elevator or to use the lift, you still, and to use the stairs, do you still use the elevator? Okay. So if you've got health and you are in a position, you're on floors that you can climb. And if the answer is you can climb, but you like to use the elevator, then think about the environment. That's number one. How many of our offices use plastic bottles for water? Can they be shifted to reusable and recyclable materials? How many of us carry our food in plastic packets or go out and buy goods in plastic packets? They are choices that we can make in our environment. Okay. How many of us eat those Lay's wafers and those potato chips that come in there? All those milk packets. And this is an important thing about the environment. If you take a milk packet and suppose this is your milk packet, a common tendency is to cut the tip. Okay. That is a very bad practice for us. You should never cut the tip because the small tips are the ones that affect the environment a lot more. You should do is cut it and leave it on, pour the milk out so that still remains one large plastic. These are not innovation. These are small things. If we get more and more aware about, we start affecting the environment. And these are some things that we can do just basic on the environment itself and not having to think about too much on innovation. If we get some of these basics right, they become habits. In getting habits is where you find it more interesting and your mind starts thinking about innovation on how I can affect my environment itself. And in this case, we're talking about policies of innovation on the use of the reuse of material. When you're talking about the regulatory environment, if you can, either through your company or through company representatives, get onto industry forums. Changing regulations and the environment takes a long time. Do not say that I've put in a request, I put that into a suggestion box, and nobody has read it for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and 4 weeks. It doesn't work that way. Anything that has been established and trying to change that can be very, very difficult. But what is it that we can do as HR practitioners? Can we enliven the environment in our workplace? Do you walk around and just check how people are? Not check on them, but check how people are. Okay. Somebody would actually joke saying, HR asked me, how am I when I'm a candidate? And when I'm an employee, HR asks me, where am I? How do we create an environment where people feel comfortable to give suggestions? How do we create and influence an environment where employees feel comfortable to speak honestly, although in a polite manner? Those are areas that we can look at environments, influencing the environment itself. A big part on the regulatory environment is understanding the policies that exist right now. I've seen a box that come up. I've seen a chat that has come which has talked about moonlighting. Okay, so let's take that problem head on. What is the issue of moonlighting? Moonlighting is talking about illegally doing things which you're not supposed to be doing. Which means if you've signed a contract which is a fixed time or a fixed number of hours with a company, then you have every right to be doing moonlighting. If you've signed a contract where you're exclusive to a company, then you are in violation of what you yourself have signed. This whole debate on moonlighting is, and I've seen jokes also going around that, if I'm working for the company, but I'm also investing in mutual funds or looking at shares, am I doing double jobs? The answer is no. But if I'm working for company X and I'm also giving my services for company Y, especially if they are related and if they are in competition, that is not only illegal, but that is immoral. If I'm doing things outside of my work hours, and it is not in conflict with the company that I work for, that is not moonlighting. So a lot of times we become experts based on WhatsApp University and YouTube, and we forget what we call our own thinking rationale. So if moonlighting is bad, when you're doing things illegally, when you're doing things contrary to what you signed up on. If you've got multiple roles to look at and multiple jobs to do, and if they're not in conflict with each other, then you also should be comfortable to let the company know what you're doing. That is an expectation of all senior executives. We as senior executives are duty bound to let the company know what we are doing outside of our work hours, and let them know, especially if it's going to be in conflict to our current roles. Okay, that's been there for the last 25, 30 years since I started working in executive positions. So for people that have raised questions and queries on moonlighting, that is my response, which is, if you're doing it with the knowledge of company, that's fine. If you're doing it in conflict, that is absolutely incorrect. If you're doing multiple things which don't conflict with each other, that's fair. And if you think it's fair, there should be no reason why you shouldn't be informing the company or your manager as to what you're doing. Let me take a pause.
Right. Sir, there's a response from Soundarya as well.
Yeah, please read that,
Yeah.
Siddharth.
So in a most generic view, it is seen that as per the employee's thought process, HR function or people and culture function is the most underrated function. How can we start to create an impact on employees where they can start valuing the HR function?
I'm going to start with, and the slide that's up there, I'm going to start with that, which is, let HR start valuing ourselves first. Okay. The number of times you've heard, what do you do? I do recruiting. I do training. I do onboarding. I do employee relations. And I'm going to start with saying as to, how do you link that with the business? If you tell someone I'm in recruiting versus if you tell someone I am building a talent pipeline so that you can deliver your business results, is there a difference in that communication? Soundarya, that is for you. So therefore, positioning the role in our own minds and being able to communicate that to the people that we work with, plus deliver as if we are delivering for a business pipeline versus I need to get so many heads on the table on the first day. There's a big difference between the two. So for us, therefore, to have an understanding as to what are the business priorities and being able to enable people who can relate that is far better than describing the HR function as activities. Let me take another example. We talk about HR policies and we talk about compliance. If I say that you cannot do this because this is the rule book, that's when people do not take the HR function seriously, and HR is undervalued. But if you were to think that if I am flouting these policies, it affects the scalability and it affects the sustainability of my business. If I am compliant, I keep my managers and I keep my directors away from going to jail. That is a very different communication, and start thinking about that. At the same time, is my compliance viable to the company or not? And are there ways to still be compliant, but not do it in the rigid manner that we think it is? Okay, that's a very common dilemma that HR faces. So I'm coming back to a whole way of how we think about our function, plus how do we communicate that to the stakeholders, and communication not just in terms of speaking, but communication in terms of how do we act and deliver to those results. So Soundarya, would that answer your question? Thank you.
All right. Sir, actually, you had another slide. I did not go to that. Let me just go to that. You had the summary. In fact, I'm not sure if we'll have time for a quick demo of our solution, because there are still a few more questions which we can take up. But can we cover this, sir, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah, that's right. So if I were to summarize my thought process, and somebody else asked the question about organizations, about industry, about how do we take care of our employee of organization culture. Every business has occupational hazard, and every function has occupational hazard. And I think it's important to understand what is unique to the industry and what is common across all industries. Similarly, with your organization culture, it's not only what works in a place, but what doesn't work and who's really in charge. Are the managers telling you to do something? Is that head office that's told the manager to do something? Or is that the owner? Once you can define that, you will know who will succeed in that environment and who will not. Are we in a growth cycle? Are we in a steady state cycle? Or are we in a cycle where it's survival? Similarly, there are similarities across functions because everybody has to contribute to the business, but there are very uniqueness about certain jobs. If you're in sales, you will have to be out on short calls. You will be away from home. If you're in accounting, your due diligence and ensuring that things don't go wrong is far more important than taking a lot of risk. What is the personality that you require in HR? Understanding of business, being fantastic listeners, and being able to deliver results just like any other function. And is that delivery expected based on the role that you have? Is it based on personality? Are you expected to be maintaining today's organization? Are you expected to be the innovator and to disrupt? Or probably a mix of both? And do you have the level of authority to do that? Somebody did ask a question as to how can I become an HR head very fast? A lot depends on which place. And do you want to be an HR head that gets to a head when you're ready and mature and stays there, versus somebody who became an HR head first, but also the first one to be let go because you didn't have the skill and you were not ready for that? So these are all choices. And again, it's not about who's right, who's wrong. It's not about moral science, which is good or bad. Understanding the reality in which we work in, and then being able to deliver in that particular reality. So with that, Siddharth, I'll take a pause and just check for guidance from you.
All right. So, sir, there are a few queries that we received during the registration forms, as we discussed. We can take up a few of that as well, if you would mind.
Yeah, go ahead
And
and
yeah,
channelize us to that, please.
sure. And there's actually one poll also which I would like to launch. Do you think it would be a good time to launch it now?
Sure.
Okay. For its audience, one more poll for all of you. Okay. We would like to know in how many cities that you've lived in during your work. Let me keep this open, and we will take up a few more queries as well. So there was also a demo plan from my end, but I will have to push it for some time later. So the ones who've shown interest in exploring a solution, we will reach out to them, and you will anyway receive a call from our end in the coming working days. So those of you who are interested, we will reach out to you separately and talk about our solution and give you a personalized demo of our solution, absolutely free. So since we are in the interactive phase right now, I do not want to disrupt that.
Yeah, we were 13 participants as being coming down, but only 6 have responded. So can we get some more responses, please?
Yeah, a few more. Okay, 7. Okay, I think we're stagnant at 8. Yeah. Okay. I will end
Okay, so we can stop, we can end the poll and then,
Sure.
And again, we're not looking at, which is right and which is wrong. Just like the first question in terms of, have you had cross-functional experience? Similarly, and circumstances have been such or may have been such wherein you were transferred around and you moved around cities, or there would have been circumstances where you couldn't move around. But in living in different cities and different parts of the country or in different parts of the world, your view of the world does change. And therefore, the environment does have an impact on how you think and how you behave and how you act. So I think that is so crucial for us to understand. That's a reality. Because in understanding our industry environment, in understanding our business environment and our organization environment, will make us far better informed as individuals and as HR practitioners to be more successful in what we do. So with that, let me thank the sponsors, let me thank the audience, and Siddharth, give it back to you.
Thank you, sir. So I mean, we have exceeded the time limit itself. But sir, if you wouldn't mind, we can probably extend by another 10 minutes. And
I'm fine till 5 o'clock.
All right. Okay. So I actually want to take up a few more queries. I want to see if we will get a few more queries on the chat. But if we can address a few that have come through the registration form, we can take that up as well. Ms. Nandita had mentioned saying how to build multi-dimensional alignment in a fast scaling environment. Well, that pretty much covers it in your slides. So that is all right. And Vishaka, she's already covered what she wanted to do. We have a question from Ms. Megha. What are the upcoming trends in HR fraternity, and where do we need to focus?
I think what's very important is the following. The trends keep changing. But let's look at what doesn't change. What doesn't change is there are demands from every segment. So there's a demand on the company from shareholders. There's a demand from the government. There's a demand from workers or the union, if you may call that. There's a demand from the industry. So a lot would depend on the industry that you are in. If I were to say that in simple terms, I would say is, if we are reading only HR books, and if you're not following business news, and if you're not reading the Economic Times or Business Standard, then we are not working in an environment in which we have a better understanding of our reality. That's the one that gives us strengths. Is your business on a strong wicket? Is it on a growth wicket? Is it struggling? If it is struggling, what do I need to do? If my business is struggling, you don't go to your CEO and say, approve a big budget on an employee function or a global or a big employee celebration day. It wouldn't work that way because you may not be able to make payroll next. At the same time, when the business has big news coming in, is the time when you go and push and you say, in doing this, the impact of that is going to be far more than in not doing this. So understanding the environment in which the organization and the business is and is working is very crucial, because then it is about timing your proposal so that it is more likely to get approved. Yeah, so that would be the I would address that. The other one, Siddharth, if I may add, is the following. A lot of times we present proposal which says, management, we should do that.
Right.
Versus, let us do this. This is what it will cost. This will be the impact. This will be the impact of doing it. This will be the impact of the consequences of not doing it. So for employees and for HR, the ability to write effective proposals or the ability to write compelling proposals is a very important part of our job.
All right, sir. Thank you for that. There is one other question from Mr. Vikram. I think he had actually spoken up as well. Best practices in HR domain for SME organizations.
We did talk about that. And again, I get back to
Right.
the business cycle. The good news about SME organization is you work very closely with the owner. Okay, that's a good news. The good news is the person is likely to listen to you far more. The bad news is if that person is not a good listener, then you don't have any chance. So understanding the person, and I get back to, and don't have to change slides, but I get back to the slide which I mentioned. It's not only about your organization culture, but who is who and who actually runs the company and who's got the power. That makes a big difference.
Absolutely.
But then do understand, in an SME organization, a small entrepreneur has put in his or her major savings. So if something goes wrong, they get hurt very badly. The impact of their risk taking, if it goes wrong, can wipe them out. So don't pass judgment. Just say, if that's the understanding, what is the risk appetite that person is going to have? Yes, I recognize one name out here, Ravi Kumar. He and I worked together, some 13, 14 years ago. So Ravi, good evening. Nice to see you here.
So, Mr.
Yes,
Ravi.
Siddharth, back to you.
All right. So just one more question, sir. From Seema Patel. In this dynamic environment of AI and robots, will the HR field be everlasting in the future? A little career oriented as well.
You've heard about Byju's and you've heard about what are the other ones, Akash, etc. And we have so many of those. Okay.
Right.
The same question can be asked with all those coming in, schools should get closed down.
Point.
And you know that wouldn't happen. Each
Right.
one does a different perspective altogether. Now, what will change, therefore, Seema, is the manner in which work gets done, that changes. So And I'll take employee onboarding as an important aspect. Some companies still go through with a lot of paperwork that needs to get done. Versus what does AI and what does automation and what do robots do? Automation takes a lot of that away from you by being able to do that upfront and putting the onus on that, putting the onus of getting those done on the manager and on the employee. And a lot of that can get done before somebody has joined. So that's what will change. It will change the manner in which you work. It will change on activities that are repeatable getting over. But not everybody can afford AI. Not everybody can afford robots. I don't see them replacing, but they'll start replacing activities, and therefore the roles of each function and the roles of HR will also change accordingly.
Fair enough, sir. Yeah. All right, sir. I mean, I have covered all the queries. So I just want to see if there are any further queries on chat from our audience. Okay.
I see a hand raised. I don't know if that's been answered.
Yeah, that was already attended, sir. It's Vishaka. Anyone else? Anyone else who would like to interact? We have another 5 minutes before we close in for the day. All right. So nothing at the moment, sir. I think we can call it a day.
Fine, Siddharth. So
All right.
want to thank you and the sponsors as said, and thank participants. So thank you very much, everyone.
The pleasure is mine, sir. And likewise, thank you so much for your time and effort, sir. I'm sure the audience was able to take a lot of inputs from today's session and having directly interacted with you, in fact. So thank you all for joining us for today's session. And once again, thank you, Mr. Anthony, for your time. I hope to see you soon in our upcoming webinars as well. And for those of them who had shown interest for us for our demo, we will be reaching out to you in the next couple of working days, and you will also, the rest of you will also receive a follow-up call as well. So on that note, thank you all and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.